Despite being a very common fear, fatalities from animal attacks are incredibly rare, with vending machines famously being more deadly every year than sharks. In most of these situations, the animals typically see humans as a threat to them rather than prey, prompting the perception of a need for self-defense. While we have something of an understanding of what can lead to an attack for most apex predators, what about the apex of apex predators? The strongest of simians, known as Sasquatch. While a lot of the time in pop culture, Bigfoot is characterized as a peaceful, hippie-ish forest dweller, it's still a giant carnivorous, or omnivorous in some cases, wild animal. Now, this isn't to say Bigfoot is a hairier Jason Voorhees. He couldn't really stay hidden if he were. The answer seems to be somewhere in the middle, although perhaps leaning a little more towards avoiding conflict with humans. What seems to be the biggest indicator of how aggressive a Bigfoot will be is which type they fall under. It's been observed that in North America, the Bigfoot that have been cited can be broken down into 4 subgroups shown in the graphic on screen. Now, within these subgroups, they tend to be categorized by what recognized animal they most closely resemble. Type 1s look like gorillas, Type 2s look like chimps, Type 3s like baboons, and Type 4s like some kind of Neanderthal-esque creature. Now, interestingly enough, Sasquatches tend to act with aggression levels very similar to the primate they most closely resemble. Take Type 1s, or patty types as they're sometimes called, for example. As I've said, they most closely resemble gorillas, and despite their prodigious size and power, gorillas are very rarely aggressive towards humans. To begin with, they're herbivores. The only animals they've been recorded eating are bugs, and in the unlikely event they do attack a human, it most likely stems from the person doing something that is seen as hostile, such as showing teeth in a smile, or in some cases even pounding their chests. Similarly, patty types are often described as shy, at absolute worst territorial, scaring people off rather than attacking, meaning lots of aggressive shouts and huff charges in some cases. They are usually the type of Sasquatch to appear in interactions that can be called positive. While I certainly wouldn't recommend running up for a hug, seeing a Type 1 Bigfoot is almost certainly not curtains if you treat them like you would any other dangerous wildlife. The next 2 types, which have been nicknamed wood boogers and googwees respectively, lie on the other end of the spectrum. The name wood booger is actually short for woodland boogeyman, due to stories of them purportedly carrying children off in the night. While there are obviously no official records of a Bigfoot doing this, in Africa their classified counterpart, chimpanzees, have exhibited the behavior. Now, as far as aggression in animals goes, chimps are a league of their own. They are our closest ancestor, and they certainly share our proclivity for violence, being the only animal, besides ourselves, to actually wage a war with other members of their species. Type 2s seem to share this ferocity, throwing rocks and even outright attacking in some encounters. Next up is the Type 3, also known as the googwee. They most closely resemble baboons, which, like chimps, are pretty nasty creatures. This is what the teeth on one look like, and they are omnivores, known to eat and kill other animals, usually in that exact order. Their Sasquatch counterpart? Where do I even begin? Googwees are without a doubt one of the most terrifying cryptids out there with their towering stature and massive fangs. It's not very hard to see why. There are reports of them outright tearing bears apart and even wearing their pelts, though whether this is done for warmth or as a trophy is unknown. There are other stories that seem to suggest not every googwee encounter is shared, for dead men tell no tales. While baboons are far less homicidal towards humans than chimps are, kleptomania is a very different story, the googwee's increased size compared to a wood booger could be what changes the dynamic. Similarly to how it's theorized that if house cats were scaled up, we might be what's for dinner. The final Sasquatch type out in the forest is the Type 4, also known as the Relic hominid. The Relic hominid is something of a mixed bag in terms of aggression, possibly owed to their more human appearance. Some tales paint them as shy and elusive, others as extremely territorial beings who take deep offense to the song "This Land Is Your Land" by Woody Guthrie, and others still describe them as engaging in symbiotic trade with humans. Whatever Type 4 Bigfoots are, they may be more similar to us than it would seem at first glance. Now, obviously, take all these reports with a little grain of salt. Only survivors of Bigfoot encounters give us their testimonies. But should you ever be lucky, or maybe unlucky, enough to run across a Sasquatch, here's what I would recommend. First off, don't even bother trying to discern what type it is. Time is not on your side. If you've seen it, it's already been watching you for a while, most likely. Avoid eye contact, and definitely do not flash those pearly whites. Back away slowly, while still facing the creature, and try to get out of whatever area you were spotted in. If you have some form of weapon, maybe try to display it in a non-threatening manner, of course, to let the creature know that there is easier prey to be found in the woods. Then, after your encounter, you, or your next of kin, should email me at jttosstories@gmail.com to have your experience narrated in the next episode of Cryptid Stories.